do this without my glasses. Okay, what's my hair doing? I'm sure that light is a little too bright right there. Oh, that background does not look that good. Today we're going on to Chapter 8 of Marie Forleo's Everything is Figureoutable. Okay, in Chapter 8, she talks about perfection and failure. I used to write a blog called Musings of a Middle School Arts Teacher, and in it I talked about the value of failure in teaching. I also do a podcast called Sally Pal, where I interview people who are creating original work for the stage, for a live audience. And I have a podcast where I talk about fear of failure, and you can actually get a link, I think here or here, somewhere up here. Okay, you can get a link to that. And go check it out because it actually has a great conversation about failure. But Marie Forleo comes at it from the angle of being a perfectionist, and she calls this chapter Progress, Not Perfection. And in it she has this wonderful quote from Elizabeth Gilbert, the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. There's also a Marie Forleo, Marie TV interview with Elizabeth Gilbert that I found really insightful. So I encourage you to go look at that as well, and there's going to be a link above me. Perfection is unachievable. It's a myth and a trap and a hamster wheel that will run you to death. Having and holding yourself to high standards is not the same as perfectionism. It's about not letting the great or the perfect get in the way of the great. That's something my husband says to me pretty regularly. Don't let the great get in the way of the good. In the book, Marie says, know this. The fear of not being good enough is universal. Everyone wrestles with it. The problem occurs when this fear metastasizes into full-blown perfectionism, because perfectionism is paralyzing. Perfectionism keeps you suffering and spinning your wheels, but the dangers reach far beyond stuckness. Once perfectionism has a chokehold on your creative life force, it will stop at nothing to snuff you out. Most of the beginning of the chapter focuses on the perils of perfectionism. And I think we all have a story from our own lives where perfectionism actually got in the way of accomplishing something that was important to us. I'm going to tell a story about a friend that I took water skiing many years ago. My parents rented a boat on a lake, and we all got in the boat and we were going to go water skiing, and he wanted to water ski very badly. And so I jumped in the water with him to help him get set up on his skis, to get his, in water skiing, you have a handle that's attached to a rope, and the rope is attached to the boat, and the boat starts slowly and pulls you out of the water, and then they push the throttle hard and pop you out sometimes, and you get up on the skis and you're skiing while holding on to a rope. It's not at all like downhill skiing, I'm told, though I've actually never been downhill skiing. That's on my bucket list. My friend gets in the water, and he's one of these people who has this attitude, if I can't do it well the first time in front of people, I really don't want to do it at all. We get in the water, and he's got the rope, and he's got his skis set in front of him, so everything is looking good, and I'm behind him, holding him, making sure that he's going to go up straight and not do too much wobble. My dad punches the throttle on the boat, and we pop him out of the water, and he goes, boom. He doesn't even get to be up for 2 seconds before he goes down. They come around and they're getting ready to drag the rope toward him so he can grab a hold of it and try again. And while he's not hurt and he didn't really even get water up his nose, he takes the skis off and says, I'm done. And as far as I know, he's never skied since. And to hear him tell it, it was something that he really wanted to try. If you compare that to people who will fall and get back up again, there's a huge difference. I went to go see a Broadway show. It was Chicago. The show was on Broadway, but the name of the show is Chicago. And there's a character, he has this patter song that he does. And a patter song is a really fast piece of music, and you have to speak quickly and clearly. And he has to tap dance as well during the song. So I'm listening to this guy, and he has this amazing voice. Of course, he's a Broadway actor. And at some point during the song, he goes up on his lyrics. In other words, he just gets lost and forgets. Not necessarily because he hasn't practiced enough. It happens. There are times when you're on stage and you just suddenly check out. If you're lucky, you check back in again very quickly. But in this case, the song was just it was a patter song, so it's too fast for him to jump back in. And so he stops the orchestra and looks at the audience and says, "This is why you come to see live theater." And then he looks at the conductor and says, "Maestro, let's try it again." And so they start the song again. And he kicks into gear on that song. I've never seen a Broadway number done better than that time. He was so inspired, and he was present as soon as he had that little failure on stage, which to him probably felt massive. But he picked himself back up, and rather than letting the lights go dark or go to the next scene or have the curtain close or anything like that, he just said, "Let's try that again." And he did, and he was amazing. And I have a feeling that that's the kind of person you definitely want to be leading your show. Someone who won't crumble when failure is imminent. All too often, we stop ourselves from doing anything new because we want so badly to get it right. We want to present an image to the world that we have it together. We have little to no tolerance for allowing ourselves the space and grace to be a beginner. Perfectionism isn't a set behavior. It's a destructive way of thinking about yourself. I think we have so much evidence of people being unwilling to fail, especially in our culture, because we train it into kids. I've mentioned Sir Ken Robinson's book, The Element, before, and in that book, he tells stories of the education system letting kids down by not allowing them to fail. And I think that's the perfectionism trap, is we think that failure is bad. We have this attitude that failure's a bad thing. Don't fail, you'll look bad, you'll be bad, it will define you. When in fact, failure is growth, failure is learning, and failure has to be something that we can do and look at and laugh about. It can't be embarrassing to fail, because that's where the juice is. There's this kind of pottery in Japan called kintsugi. It's where if the pottery has a crack in it, they fill the crack with gold so that the pottery is still viable and now considered even more beautiful than it was before. I think people are like that. People with failures and damage and problems, those are the most interesting people. And if we're willing to learn from the events in our lives where we have failed, then I think it makes us more beautiful. I was suggesting to my husband this morning the reason that old people like antiques so much is because antiques prove the value of something that's old. If you love and pay high dollar for an antique, then maybe you can love an old person too. So over 50 is a time to really think hard about this perfectionism trap, because it's really the time to let go of it. Mistakes provide growth. And if you can show other people, see, I've made this mistake and survived it, and you can too. Maybe there needs to be more of that. You deserve to make some mistakes. Don't let making mistakes define you in any negative way. If anything, it's your response to making mistakes that really matters. If you can respond to making mistakes by using them as a growth opportunity, then you're going to grow in all the best possible ways. So, know this. No matter what kind or how many mistakes you have made, you are becoming better. You're growing. Even though you may not be able to see it or feel it, if you can embrace those parts of you, the parts that you don't want anybody else to see, if you can embrace them and even share them, it's going to be okay. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I love doing these videos. I'm learning so much so fast. So I hope you will reach out to me and let me know what you're learning, what books you're reading that are self-help books, or what kinds of things you're doing, or even some of the ways that you failed and made a comeback. Because I think that's how to break the perfectionism trap, is to fail and let people know that you can come back from failure. There's a saying that I've had in the theater world for a while with all of my students, and that is, you need to stop comparing your backstage chaos to someone else's well-rehearsed showcase. And that has never been more true. With social media showing only the best sides of everyone's life, it can feel a little bit lonely out there. So own your mistakes. Don't worry about it. All that you do when you own your mistakes is make other people feel confident in owning theirs. Thanks, guys. You're awesome. Be sure and subscribe, and especially if you comment. YouTube, for some reason, really likes it when people comment on the videos. So let me know what you're thinking. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of this. And do check out some of these other options. You can look at playlists for each of the books. I have a playlist for the Marie Forleo book. I have a playlist for the Designing Your Life book. And I have a playlist for the Julia Cameron book. So if you want to look at the playlists and study the books, you can also order the books through my affiliate links down below. We'll talk again in a couple of days. Bye.